Greetings, ladies and managers, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The War Above the Forgotten Grave. The cold void of space, in the small and somewhat isolated star system, bustled with activity, the likes of which hadn't been seen in centuries. Tens of thousands of ships of every conceivable size, shape, and length battled with each other in this tiny space. Massive battle cruisers slowly drifted towards each other, only for one or both to be met by a hail of close-range broadside fire. Other sleeker ships used beam cannons or laser weapons to strike targets from incredible ranges, while others exchanged fighter or bomber wings. Pulses of blaster fire raced across the cold void as the battle raged on in earnest. Flashes of light as fireballs erupted from hulls hit by missiles, explosions in the middle of nowhere, indicating a missile had been shot before hitting its target. Streaks of solid light, beams from heavy anti-ship lasers lit up the empty void, sometimes followed by a ship being hit. Sometimes a ship's shields would be out of commission. Other times the ships would simply dissipate the strike, and the ship would return fire with its own beam of energy. I pulled my flight controls hard to the right as I tried to escape a missile. Luck was on my side as my wingman shut it down with his laser cannons. We regrouped and went back to chasing a few Citadel-class missiles heading towards our flagship. The missiles were the size of a small destroyer, but moved very slowly, relatively speaking. But if they hit, they could do catastrophic damage. We raced towards one of the four and started firing on it. We had to keep our distance. The explosions from these things would kill us both if we were too close. The majority of the battle took place in the skies around the larger warship. Fighters, bombers, and strike craft engaged in unending dogfights. An eternal ocean of swirling engine trails and streaks from light cannons and beam strikes flashed in every conceivable direction. A veritable rainbow of colors flashed and streaked through the cold void. Hundreds of thousands of fighter craft, warships in every size and strength, and craft of every kind fought in the star system, all warring to seize control of the small but rich planet in the star system. I peeked out at it for a short moment as my fingers pressed various trigger buttons. A small green forest planet in a star system of 5 planets. This one, the second world in its star. The thing is, it had a perfect climate for farming and the richest soil fertility rate of any farm world in the galaxy. This tiny world could easily feed billions, especially with current tech. We could overproduce food supply for decades and have room to expand to other farm worlds. I snapped back to the present moment as my bomber's hull-mounted plasma cannons roaring to life. The plasma bolt was going to hit its target, and we both bugged out as fast as possible. The explosion radiated outwards just as we escaped the radius, a spatial shockwave from the heat hitting our backs. We retreated further to a new target. A lone destroyer had snuck out of its formation and was now alone near a small asteroid. It was an easy kill, and we were close by. It was only now that I had the chance to look around and see just how immense this battle was. I couldn't count how many warships were in the star system, tens of thousands at least. This was the biggest single battle in galactic history. This was compounded as my Navigacomp notified me of an incoming Dreadnought-class warship. This was about to become a lot worse. Dreadnoughts were fleet killers, absurdly huge lumps of metal, each with one explicit purpose: to destroy entire fleets. If one was coming, it meant that its enemy fleet was about to face a catastrophic loss. We headed to our target, a small, partially damaged destroyer hiding in the asteroid belt, barely making it to the point that we could hide behind a few asteroids and hit it from behind its visual and radar coverage. Just as we were about to accelerate to attack speed, a staggeringly huge warship appeared in the star system. It was the Dreadnought. "Dreadnought!" I yelled over comms and alerted my comrades of the encroaching target. "Affirm, target sighted," my wingman replied. "Quick, get into cover!" I yelled as the ship started to materialize into real space. The process of the FTL travel was accomplished through the use of what we called subspace engines. The spool-up process for this was long and annoying, depending on the mass of the ship in question. Transferring entire ship masses into star systems could take hours, as molecule by molecule the ship mass had to be precisely moved and rearranged inside of a new destination from its old point in space. This, however, was a lot faster. Within minutes, I saw it fully materialize, and its engines suddenly fire up. "Wait, what was it? I've never seen a design like that before," my wingman Gallus said as he flew next to me. "Me neither. I don't recognize any faction's insignias either. What even is that thing? How is it so heavily armed?" I asked, looking at the sheer absurd quantity and quality of the weaponry arrayed across this massive hull. It then blasted its massive engines and moved across the star system with more speed and agility than any ship its size had any right to. We gunned our own engines in a vain effort to try and keep up with it. Why? I had no idea. I was mesmerized by the sight of it. I flew in slightly closer, trying to see what kinds of details I could see off this thing's hull. I got a bit too close, as one of its huge battleship cannons on the thing suddenly flipped around and aimed its bus-sized barrel at me. Again, moving with more speed and dexterity than it had any damn right to. I shat myself and quickly pulled back. It was now, I noticed, I wasn't the only one who was fascinated by this thing, as at last a dozen other ships, including the same destroyer we had been tracking earlier, had decided to take a look at it. The gun turret that aimed at me snapped back to forward-facing position, and the ship continued to accelerate as we flew around it. Then, suddenly, everyone but myself broke away from it as a sound from my radio suddenly spoke up. "Terran! It's a Terran warship!" A radio call sounded out as suddenly as I found myself alone, flying close to the behemoth. The name of the humans, the so-called Terrans, is one that is held in reverence and infamy by the galaxy. Many years ago, a great scourge threatened life itself. Humanity's war against it, and the absurd planet-killing weapons and star-exploding superdreadnoughts it had brought to bear for this war, made the galaxy collectively crap themselves. When the war was over, the Terrans just vanished back into the cold void, from whence they came, and over the next 1,000 years, disappeared from the galaxy's collective conscience. Before this moment, a Terran ship had not been seen for centuries. Now there was one here, suddenly appearing at the apex of the largest battle in the galaxy's history. Every ship suddenly ceased fire. Every fighter retreated to its flagship. The plethora of colors and energy that had moments ago flashed across the void, now replaced by the cold, empty hue of space, as everyone, regardless of faction or zeal, didn't want to accidentally draw the warship's ire. I, however, was transfixed, hypnotized by its strangely ornate-looking warship. Between the cannons, the lasers, defense and shield emitter arrays, a beautiful sight of gold, silver and purple trim and detailing. It looked handcrafted. What even is this? I idly say. I felt like a sequence in a fever dream. As we quickly passed the massive warship fleet that had stopped its fighting, glints of silver and grey paint flew past me as I struck close to the ship, as the fleet carefully maneuvered around it. The flashy black and red paint jobs of the opposing fleet flew past, still at speeds far too unreasonable for a ship this size. It made its way through the planet's atmosphere. There was no heat, no shockwave, no distortion. Normally, when a ship this size enters a planet's atmosphere, there is chaos due to thermal exchange. But the shield, it was as if we were warping the atmosphere around us to slip through it. Was their tech so powerful that they could safely land a dreadnought on a planet? The thought petrified me. I had no more time to think about it, though. The ship stopped its descent, and with the softness of a gentle flower, it touched down on the rocky outcrop near a field. I moved away from it and landed near it, close enough that I could smell the exhaust fumes. I got out of my cockpit and noticed the sets of eyes staring at me from behind windows. Humans, just as terrifying as their legend spoke of. Thousands of them staring me down from a tiny viewpoint. A dozen cannons and turrets swung around to aim at me. I showed them my service rifle, pistol and knife, making it clear I was leaving them behind inside my ship, and closed the cockpit canopy. The turrets swiveled away, and I wandered from the towering behemoth. I had no real idea as to what to do here. I noticed a human, a male by the looks of it, get on some kind of ancient two-wheeled transport machine. He inserted an odd metallic item into it and turned it. The sounds of a heavy-grade internal combustion engine filled the air of the valley. I retrieved a spyglass, which was actually attached scope of my rifle, and turned on the feed from my helmet. He revved the engine, a thunderous roar being heard for miles around. I'd been watching it so closely, I hadn't noticed a human had left the ship and was now standing next to me. The machine was clearly ancient, but looked like it was fresh off the assembly line. Shiny metal parts and freshly coated paint. It looked immaculate. The human who presumably owned it sat on it, now wearing a strange uniform with an old helmet with an elongated cap, shading his eyes from the sun. He revved up the engine and drove away. The beast of a machine drove easily across the terrain, leaving no trace of its presence, but charged up hills, across mounds, and over short cliffs and bumps, with the operator performing what appeared to be tricks while all this took place. This continued for a few minutes before he finally drove back to the small clearing nearby. He pulled off his helmet and reached into his backpack he was carrying. "Flowers," I said to myself. "Shh," I heard a voice say next to me. I nodded and watched. The male approached a small clearing, and kneeling by the small mound with a slab of stone poking out of the ground, and gently laid the flowers on it. It finally hit me. It was a grave. We had started a full-blown war just before a human's funeral ritual. I shuffled nervously and cleared my throat. "Sorry." I was shushed again, but this time with a smile as the ritual progressed. I stood awkwardly, watching the display carry on. The entire time my helmet was recording the entire thing. At this point, I had no idea the entire fleet was nervously shuffling and silently apologizing as we waited for the ritual to play out. Eventually, the male at the grave stood back up. I could clearly see streams of liquid coming from his eyes as he got back on his odd vehicle and returned to the ship. I could hear what he was saying thanks to my advanced hearing. "Doesn't matter how many times I do that. It never gets any easier." He was embraced by several others, a mix of civilians and soldiers by the looks of it, and was herded into the confines of the ship in tears. I looked around for any explanation. The door closed, and the human female next to me smiled. "Just a dad's yearly trip to say goodbye. His son died in the Rakundi War," she said. "But that was 1,000 years ago," I replied, bewildered. "Yeah. What's your point?" she replied. "You mean to tell me that man has been performing a ritual every year for 1,000 years?" I asked. "Yes. Your point?" I stayed silent and wondered what was going on. "Ah, I see. You don't have a point," she said. "I guess you need to go back to your war then. Please do remember, however, show respect to the dead and try not to disturb the grave." "Wait, who exactly is buried here? Is there a name?" I asked pleadingly. "The Butcher of Hactos 4, of course. James Johnny Boy Martinez." My jaw and the jaws of all other listening and watching hit the floor and remained that way. The legendary human warrior who single-handedly held off an entire Rakundi war hive, taking out a hive mind just to allow a refugee ship the chance to escape. She sighed. "Every year his dad comes out here, performs some tricks on his son's faithful old dirt bike, and lays a bouquet at his grave, just like Johnny would always do, signing up for the military service of the New Scotland invasion. We have our own ceremony to thank soldiers like this back home, but this is his dad's personal thing," she said. "The human homeworld is rumored to be thousands of light years from here. Why is he buried in this tiny grassland planet all the way out here?" I asked, bewildered. "Because Johnny said he wanted to be buried somewhere quiet and cozy. What's quieter and cozier than this place?" she replied calmly. I had no real answer. I just stood around. I had no idea what to do. After what seemed an eternity, I finally gave up. "I guess we can't stay here, then. I'll inform the fleet that we need to stay away from here," I said. "I was hoping you would say that. Do take care. We'll probably be back here at the same time next year," she said, and walked back to the ship. With that, the dreadnought returned to space as effortlessly as it arrived. From down upon the ground, I could see the shield warping the air around it. I wanted to go. I wanted to return to my fleet, but something felt wrong. I couldn't. Not yet. I sat in my cockpit for a few minutes, just trying to make sense of what was going on. I got a radio call. "Janice, come back to the ship. We're going home. I can't be here anymore," my commander said. "Give me a moment. There's something I need to do first," I replied. I stood up from the cockpit and went through my backpack for something. I knew I had it with me, and indeed I found what I was looking for. I headed to the grave with purpose in every step. I approached it and gently placed the little pin my broodmate made for me on the tombstone and gave it a salute. It was a pin made to look like a few leaves from one of our homeworld's banban trees. I stood at attention for a minute, then returned to my ship. I returned to my ship, got back to space to be met with a legion of questioning eyes. I simply shrugged. "I didn't feel right just to leave," I said. And wandered off to my bunk and rest. I headed for a day's rest. There was too much shame in the rest of the fleet. Commanders and admirals all just called each other to retreat. Both sides, even the mercenaries, just turned around and returned home. The uproar caused by this event was on a galactic scale. Not only did we find the resting place of one of the galaxy's great heroes, we also had a close encounter with a Terran warship, and lived through it. Our Emperor was more distressed than anyone else at the revelation when I, a lowly pilot, was called to meet with him. I was shaking, terrified, awed, the great Emperor himself sitting on the silver throne. I had worn my best battle dress that day, as good as a lowly pilot could afford anyway. "Janice, Corporal, yes?" he said. "Yes, my lord," I replied. "I saw the video recording of your encounter. Why did you break ranks?" He glared at me. "I know not, my lord. The ship. I was hypnotized. The detailing on the hull, its sudden appearance. I know not," I shuddered. His gaze was scaring me. "Is everything within that video accurate? Did you see it all with your own eyes as truth?" he said, leaning in to look me in the eyes. "Yes, my lord, as was truth." "Do you think all human warships are that heavily armed?" he asked. "I hadn't given it any thought up to now, my lord. I suppose so. It was a dreadnought, after all." "That was not a dreadnought. Humans have this thing where they do not understand the concept of scale, and have an engineering prowess to match it. What you saw was a basilisk class, a battle cruiser. The dreadnoughts are 10 times that size," he said. The court erupted in a terrified gasp. I went pale and stood there, shivering. "But that's a lesson for another day. As for you, Janice," he stood from the throne and approached. "Why exactly did you put a pin on the grave? That was a broodmate pin, wasn't it?" "Yes, my lord. I had no flowers or anything, and it just felt wrong to leave it without doing something," I said, shivering as he stared at me. Good answer. I'm now stripping you of your commission as a pilot for the Royal Navy. I have a new job for you, Praetorian Janus," he said. The crowd grasped in shock. My face went pale, and I had no idea what else to say. That was a massive promotion I'd just been given. Pardon? "Do you question me?" he said, strangely calm. No, my Emperor. No question at all," I replied with haste. "That's what I thought. Your new job shall be as my personal Praetorian. Your exclusive duty will be to travel down to that planet every month as my representative and put flowers on his grave, then come home. Do you know why?" he asked. Is there some personal significance to the hero buried there, my lord?" I asked. "Yes, Johnny boy. I was there. 1,000 years ago at the last stand on Haktos 4. I was but a mere podling, barely able to speak. But I saw him. He had been reduced to sitting against a wall as both his legs had been ripped off, one eye gone, the right arm in pieces. He fought hard. He kept screaming at us to go as we boarded the transport to evacuate. The medics tried to rescue him. He screamed at them to go, refusing any support, until everyone was off-world. I Owe him everything. It was he who set the example that all our military forces now follow. Selflessness, duty, honor, loyalty, sacrifice, he said, returning to his throne. I had been attempting to contact the Terran Union for centuries, asking for information, and been able to show my proper respects until now. Owing to the fact that I am now the Emperor of the galaxy-spanning empire, I can't go myself for obvious reasons. You will go on my behalf. From this point on, you will every month go down to that world, place a bouquet of flowers, thank him for his service, and then come home. That will be your job from now on. Understand? He asked. Yes, my lord, I said, standing to full attention. If I may ask something else first, what exactly are we going to do about the Retinai? We were at war with them barely a week ago. I've contacted the Grand Master, and we have come to a personal agreement. Of sorts. The war with them is effectively over. No further action will be taken. They have their own debt to pay to the humans, the Empress said, to a loud gasp of shock from the court. Didn't see that coming, I said. Indeed. Think carefully for a moment, Praetorian Janus. Think. Before humanity arrived, we had been fighting against the Ferrani hordes for millennia. They effectively ended that war. We never asked them to. We never told them to. We've never bought them, convinced them, nothing. We simply warned them of the horrors they could face. The children lost, the lives destroyed, the worlds ruined, and without even telling us why. They engaged. No prompt, no bribe, nothing. They simply saw evil and threw themselves at it to make it go away. A war that lasted thousands of years ended in just 8 months. Johnny Boy was but one of many millions of humans we lost. One of many millions who gave everything they had just to save some random aliens they never even knew. This apparently is something all humans have in them, the ability to give everything for a brief moment of someone else's happiness. That's what you saw down there, Janus. A basilisk warship, a crew of thousands, taking time out of their patrols, expending valuable fuel and food supplies, potentially leaving their route of operations open to pirates or worse. All just to give a father a few hours alone to say goodbye to his son he lost. That is what happened down there, and we disturbed that moment by fighting each other above that world. A sacrifice forsaken, forgotten, abandoned, dishonor of the worst kind. By disturbing that man's moment of peace, a crime of disrespecting the sacrifice made by a man who had everything to lose, but gave it anyway. A crime we will now make amends for. You begin your new duties in the morning, Janus. Make sure you carry them out appropriately, with dignity, honor, and hope. The Empress said. I saluted the Emperor and made my way to my new quarters, alongside the other Praetorians who greeted me with kindness. As expected, the very next day, I was back on that world, a laurel wreath on the tombstone, my hands to the temple. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.